in reference to God, to station manager Felicia Albritton, to both alliances, the Mobile Ministerial Alliance President Pastor Sandy McQueen, to the Pritchard Alliance President Pastor Jeffrey Mackey, to all of my fellow pastors and ministers, and to all of our listeners in Radio Land, I bring you greetings from the Pritchard Ministerial Alliance. Today, we'll be speaking from the context of Joshua, the first chapter. I will mention specifically 3 verses. There's verse 2, verse 3, and verse 9. And it reads from the King James Version. In verse 2, it said, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now therefore arise, go over this Jordan, thou and all this people, into the land which I do give to them, even to the children of Israel. Every place that the sole of your foot shall tread upon, that have I given unto you. As I said with Moses, he's saying to Joshua, and he's saying to Joshua, I put that in there. In verse 9, he said, have not I commanded thee, be strong and of a good courage. Be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed. For the Lord thy God is with thee, whithersoever thou goest. And very quickly, we'll just speak from a title or subject, go over this Jordan. This Jordan. When we hear the River Jordan mentioned, there are certain things that come to mind that we remember. We remember Jordan many times in Scripture. We remember when Lot had chose this plain at some point on Jordan. And we remember that from Genesis, the 13th chapter, verses 10 and 11. We do remember on this Jordan, Jacob crossed the river. That's found in Genesis 32:10. We remember that Israel camped on it at the end of the 40 years. That's found in the book of Numbers, chapter 22, and verse 1. And we see that one of the books of the Pentateuch was written, the book of Deuteronomy, was written near this river. And if you needed some references, we could look at the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 1, verses 10. And we see on this very river that Joshua received his first instructions. As I read in this context this day, it was Joshua 1 and 2. We see that on this very river as well, that it was dried up by a miracle about 3 times. We see that it was dried up by Joshua. We see it was dried up by Elijah. We see it was dried up by Elisha. It is a very significant river, just to mention those few things. Crossing this Jordan, we notice that God spake unto Joshua. We don't know how, or it is not written how he spake to Joshua. We don't know if God spoke to him in a vision. We don't know if he spoke to him in a loud or silent voice, or a dream. We don't know if he spoke to him by prophecy. But in verse 1 of the book of Joshua, it tells us that God has spake unto Joshua. And then it goes on telling us at the point in time when he did. The very first line of verse says, he said, after the death of Moses, he spake to Joshua. And so this tells us that God was commissioning Joshua to carry on, or there was a passing of the torch where Joshua was to lead the children of Israel into the promised land. Now, he goes on after he said, Moses, my servant, is dead. He told him to arise, get up. He's calling him to duty. And he said, I want you to go over this Jordan. And I just want to say very quickly, many times we're called to arise from our circumstances, from the mire, to get up and do certain things. We cannot do things that God has given us a purpose to do by sitting down. So God calls us up and instructs us at times to move on. I'm just talking about going over this Jordan. Here is a physical Jordan that is described in our context today. But we have our spiritual Jordans that we have to cross. I'm reminded of a song when I was growing up that the church was saying, Jordan River, one more river to cross. And it gets on down saying my mother or my father can't help me cross this river. But it gets down and it says that Jesus can help me to cross. Our spiritual Jordan rivers have to be crossed after direction by the assistance and aid of Jesus. Here, Joshua was being aided by God himself. And so here, go over this Jordan. And so quickly, we see that God tells him about 3 times in the first couple of verses. In verse 6, he emphasizes to be strong and of a good courage. He told him in verse 6 that this people, he said, you shall divide for an inheritance. He's letting you know that he's fulfilling the promise that he had given earlier to the ancestors and the people that are connected with Joshua. We see in verse 7, he said, only be thou strong and very courageous. Notice in the final verse, he said, have not I commanded thee, be strong and of a good courage. And then there's something, a different twist. He said, be not afraid, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee, whithersoever thou goest. So now he's giving Joshua an assurance. We see that along with this assurance prior to this be strong, one thing so beautiful about this, and we should see as an example, God tells Joshua that every place that your feet tread upon will be yours. And then he goes on to give him how far this would stretch. He said from the Mediterranean to the Euphrates, and this sounds like the mentioning of the Tigris-Euphrates River Valley, the Fertile Crescent area, and he said the wilderness to Lebanon. And then he said, this is the good part. He said, no man shall be able to stand before you all the days of your life. Now that's beautiful. That's a promise and an assurance. He said, again, he says, as I was with Moses, I will be with you. And here's another one. Sometimes we feel like we're going to fall in our circumstance. He said, I will not fail you. He said, I won't forsake you. He said, I will divide this land. And then he said, I'm with you whethersoever thou goest. And so when we look at God coming up to Joshua, many times we have been forsaken by people, loved ones, by death or whatever. But God comes up to us as if he's passing the torch. Here he's actually passing the torch. He said, I want you to lead this people over this Jordan. And so when you feel weak, God is telling you not to be afraid, because this was a formidable enemy, and these were a warlike people. And so apparently Joshua, maybe in his mind and his heart, felt afraid. And so I'm just telling you, as we read this context today, in Joshua, the first chapter, these 9 verses, don't be afraid when you have to cross your spiritual Jordans. Just be encouraged. And again, I'll say that last verse 9. It said, neither be thou dismayed, for the Lord thy God is with thee, whithersoever thou goest. So when you feel like you're crashing mentally or spiritually, don't be afraid for whatever it is that's stressing you out. Now, I just previously mentioned the other day that we're going through the holiday seasons. Maybe you feel like you cannot get the things that you want, or sometimes in certain circumstances, our Jordans is we can't be with the people we want to be with. But be encouraged when you have God. When you have God with you, promising and assuring you that he'll be with you whithersoever thou go. When you have to cross these certain spiritual Jordans, know that he's with you, and that it doesn't necessarily have to be people or material things. Be assured when God is with you, you will cross your Jordan. So you be blessed during these holidays, and may God give you traveling grace wherever you're going, whatever Jordans you have to cross. God will be with you. Just be not afraid or dismayed. Don't be discouraged, because God will be with you. And so enjoy the holidays, the birth of Christ, and may this message bless someone out there in radio land. And so it is my prayer that God bless and keep you throughout the season and throughout your life, as he promised Joshua. May God bless you.